Console generations are a funny thing. We wait so long and yet they arrive in a moment. This has been an exceptionally busy period personally, so it will be a while before I really get to enjoy the Switch 2 in all its glory. I have been asked if I do an unboxing of the Switch 2, and part of me slightly regrets not doing so, but I'm not well set up in terms of camera recording and also, again, time. All the same, I did want to give a few very first impressions of this beautiful new system. At the time of talking, I'm waiting for Mario Kart World to download, so I've really not done a lot except set the system up, and I am literally talking flash impressions out of the gate for this video. Firstly, all credit to Nintendo's store. I was fortunate to be invited to order a Switch 2 by Nintendo, having met their criteria, which has taken a big chunk out of the stress of ordering in the first place. It wasn't completely smooth sailing, as their confirmation codes, which needed to be entered within 10 minutes of receiving them, seemed to take hours to arrive, if they ever did, but eventually I did manage to get through their system. I don't use the Nintendo store very often. In fact, the last time I did may well have been when I purchased the Switch OLED. I have to say that it still wasn't the smoothest of experiences. At one point I couldn't even find the shopping cart, and I felt like their signposting could have been better. But eventually I was able to order the console, the GameCube controller, and I went with the Hori Piranha Plant camera. I know, I was in two minds about this, as the camera is lower resolution than the official Switch 2 camera, 480p as opposed to 1080p, and there remains some uncertainty about how well it will actually work. However, I have other cameras that will probably do the job, but what I don't have is something light enough to plug into the top of the Switch 2 for when I play, as I almost always do in handheld mode. Plus, it's a really cool item that's just a lot more fun than the standard, rather austere looking camera. The final box that arrived was a nondescript cardboard box on the outside, but beautiful Mario red on the inside, the same as when I ordered my Switch OLED through them, but actually an even bigger box to accommodate all the extra bits and pieces. Opening the Switch 2, which is the Mario Kart edition, I was really pleased to see that the Mario Kart box is only a cover for the actual classic style Switch 2 box, which I'm quite glad, as I like the classic Switch 2 design. Not that I have much cause to use the box in the future, I suppose. First impressions of the Switch 2 itself? Well, not having gone to a Switch 2 event, this is all new to me, and it feels monstrously big. It genuinely feels almost too massive at first, although I dare say I will adapt soon enough, and although side by side the OLED doesn't seem all that much smaller, somehow at the same time the screen feels really tiny next to it. The imposing black Joy-Con do feel oddly austere for Nintendo, and I kind of hope they do introduce some more appealing Joy-Cons sooner or later. But in the main, the black is a great look, and I admit I did go for the grey for the first Switch, and it took some time for me to warm up to the neon. But things like finding the home button on the Switch 2 is actually not that easy in low light, unless you already know where it is, which, to be fair, of course I do. The magnets are incredibly satisfying as well and seem really secure. There's a tremendous click, and it's a fantastic design. When you load it up, you first have to agree to important information, which confirms that any software is licensed by Nintendo for personal and non-commercial use, so you can't lease or rent the software, nor sublicense, publish, copy, modify, adapt, translate, reverse engineer, decompile, or disassemble any portion other than as permitted by applicable laws. There's also a bit about updates and potential bans. Basically, you brick it, you bought it. All this isn't unprecedented, but does feel a little bit unwelcoming. As it goes through the instructions, though, it does suggest changing the kickstand. Now, I don't think I like this new kickstand quite as much in terms of feel as the OLED stand, which is obviously a lot more solid, but it certainly does the job, and it's very satisfying in terms of clicking back into place, and that click is a far cry from the very original 2017 kickstand. It is a massive, massive upgrade looked through that prism. Updating and setup really does take quite a long time when you factor in data transfers, and it was mostly smooth sailing, although I wasn't paying attention properly to one instruction on micro SD cards and then couldn't go back to check what it said, which was mildly annoying, but I figured it out anyway, and it was, after all, my own fault. Right away, I went to download Mario Kart World, the GameCube app, and yes, Welcome Tour. Come on. It's a game deep diving the fine details of the Switch 2 and how it was made. There was never a world where I wasn't going to check it out. Curiously, the GameCube age rating would seem to preclude the darker content coming to it, at least at first. Eternal Darkness may be a while, therefore, although I guess they'll have some way to adapt the age ratings later on. I can't really remember how they did this for the N64 off the top of my head. As for Mario Kart, I will say, and this isn't news to most people, those game download codes are really inelegant. I know they've been around for ages, but I've never had one before myself. It's annoying, although I guess understandable, that the game isn't preloaded, but at least since the game and console were bought through the same Nintendo account, surely the purchase could be linked to the account ahead of time, saving the aggravation of entering a fiddly code. It's odd that Nintendo sweats the small stuff in terms of making its products really user-friendly, and then does stuff like this, which is just frustrating. It's not that it's dreadful, it's just that it's inelegant. All things considered, though, it's still feeling unreal to actually have the system in my hands. More thoughts will be following in the next few days as I get into the game. My recording time is really tight right now, but there will be pre-scripted content on here and on Patreon, although newer stuff will probably be a little slimmer for the next week or so. Let's just say, though, that I'm very, very glad that there is no current sign of a Nintendo Direct this week. Okay, that sounds like the beep of something being downloaded, so I just have a bit of time this evening to go and check it out. I hope in time to check out lots of the Switch 2 games and features, and in many respects, the one I'm particularly looking forward to is perhaps an odd choice, but it's actually the up-resed version of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. I absolutely adore Link's Awakening, and I can't wait to run the game again with the new visuals. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are a little bit too vast to just casually dip into, and so may wait a little longer, but the idea of being able to start a new playthrough in Breath of the Wild without going through Master Mode, or without deleting my system data, or of course without setting up a new account, is tantalizing. And then there's the chance to rediscover Super Mario Odyssey as new, a game I haven't extensively played for a very, very long time indeed. Then there's Wind Waker, a title I adore, but again, haven't played for so very, very long. And while I expect all of this will keep me plenty busy, I do have a mind to finally check out Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which I skipped given the poor reception it received in terms of its playability in certain respects. I know this might have been overblown according to some people, but for some people it seemed quite important. I don't tend to notice those sorts of things too much, but then again, I'm also not the most massive of Pokemon fans, so it was a game that I felt fairly comfortable at the time skipping out on until such time as it was able to be played in the best possible format, which it seems is now possible through the Switch 2. It's all pretty exciting, but in the meantime, all I can say is I wish everybody a very happy new console. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting the channel over the last couple of years, and I shall look forward to seeing you all next time for another Nintendo Forecast.